The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Admiral Zephix's forearms gestured toward the massive holographic display. The image showed a creature that had haunted the nightmares of civilizations for over 3,000 years. Standing nearly 8 feet tall at the shoulder, with metallic scales that gleamed like polished obsidian, the beast possessed 6 legs, ending in razor-sharp claws, and a head crowned with crystalline horns that could pierce through starship hull plating. "Behold the Krethak," Admiral Zephix announced, his voice carrying the weight of ancient dread. "The last of the Void Hunters' war beasts. After the Great War that nearly destroyed our galaxy, we thought all these creatures had been eliminated. We were wrong." Captain Sarah Chun of the human exploration vessel Prometheus studied the image with professional interest rather than the terror that gripped her alien colleagues. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species shifted nervously in their seats. "Where was this creature discovered?" asked Counselor Vex, the Alterian representative, his voice crackling like breaking glass. "The dead system of Keth Prime," Admiral Zephix replied. A salvage crew detected energy readings from what they thought was abandoned Void Hunter technology. Instead, they found this creature guarding a massive weapons cache in the ruins of an ancient fortress. 3 ships attempted to approach. None returned. Sarah raised her hand, drawing surprised looks from around the chamber. Humans were the newest members of the Galactic Council, having joined only 50 years ago. Many species still viewed them as primitive newcomers despite their rapid technological advancement. "Admiral, what exactly makes these creatures so dangerous?" Sarah asked. "The historical records I've read are incomplete." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Several aliens turned to stare at Sarah as if she had just announced her intention to juggle live plasma grenades. Admiral Zephix's golden eyes widened in disbelief. "Captain Chun," he said slowly, "surely your people have been briefed about the Void Wars. The Krethak were bred by the Void Hunters as the ultimate biological weapons. Each creature possessed the strength to tear apart armored vehicles, speed that made them nearly impossible to track, and intelligence rivaling our greatest military tacticians. But their most terrifying trait was their psychic presence." "Psychic presence?" Sarah inquired, genuinely curious. "The mere proximity to a Krethak induces paralyzing terror in most sentient species," explained Council Marathak, the elderly Gorlan whose people had fought in the original Void Wars. "Their minds emit a field of pure predatory instinct that overwhelms the survival mechanisms of their prey. Entire battalions of trained soldiers would simply freeze in place, unable to move as the creatures methodically eliminated them." Sarah nodded, filing away this information. "And this particular creature has been alone for 3,000 years. "Presumably," Admiral Zephix confirmed. "The Krethak were engineered for longevity. This one has likely been in some form of stasis, awakening period." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, all speaking at once. When order was finally restored, Admiral Zephix looked grim. "The standard protocol is orbital bombardment," he said. "We cannot risk allowing Void Hunter technology to fall into the wrong hands, and we certainly cannot permit a Krethak to remain active. However, the creature has positioned itself within a heavily shielded facility. Our weapons cannot penetrate without using force sufficient to destroy the entire planet. And that's problematic because," Sarah prompted. "Because Keth Prime was once the cultural heart of the Kethran civilization," Counselor Vex explained. "Even our most elite warriors would be helpless against its mental influence." "What if someone wasn't affected by the psychic field?" Sarah asked. "Such a being does not exist," scoffed Counselor Marathak. "The fear response is fundamental to survival. No sentient creature lacks it entirely." Sarah smiled slightly. "Admiral, I'd like to volunteer for this mission." The chamber fell dead silent. For a long moment, nobody moved. Finally, Admiral Zephix spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Captain Chun, I must question whether you fully understand what you're suggesting. This creature has killed thousands of the galaxy's finest warriors. Its very presence drives trained soldiers to madness. And you wish to face it alone? Understand the risks, Sarah replied calmly. But humans might have certain advantages in this situation. What advantages could possibly outweigh the creature's psychic dominance? Demanded Counselor Vex. Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. Admiral, has the Council ever studied human psychological profiles in detail? Your species submitted the standard psychological. Those assessments were based on our civilian population, Sarah said. I think you might find military personnel present some interesting variations. She activated her personal data pad and transmitted a file to the chamber's central display. This is my psychological profile, compiled by human military psychologists. The assembled aliens studied the data with growing confusion. Admiral Zefix's golden eyes narrowed as he read the assessment. This indicates severe psychological abnormalities, he said slowly. Extreme aggression, suppressed fear response, heightened territorial instincts, abnormal reaction to stress stimuli. He looked up sharply. Captain Shun, according to this assessment, you display characteristics consistent with a predator rather than prey. That's one way to put it, Sarah agreed. Human military screening identifies individuals with specific psychological traits that make them effective in extreme combat situations. We call them apex predators, soldiers who don't just overcome fear, but actually become more focused and dangerous when threatened. Counselor Marathak's tentacles writhed in agitation. Are you suggesting that humans have bred their own version of war beasts? Not bred, Sarah corrected. Selected. These traits occur naturally in a small percentage of our population. Military screening identifies them and provides appropriate training and outlets. This is highly irregular, Admiral Zefix muttered, reviewing the data again. Your psychological profile indicates that you experience excitement rather than fear when facing mortal danger. Your stress responses actually improve your cognitive function rather than degrading it. And your territorial instincts. He paused. Captain Shun, this suggests you would view the Kretak not as an overwhelming threat, but as a challenge to be conquered. That's essentially correct, Sarah confirmed. I've studied the historical records of Kretak encounters. In every case, the opposing forces were paralyzed by fear and overwhelmed by the creature's psychic presence. But what if someone approached who wasn't afraid? What if someone saw the creature as just another opponent to outthink and outfight? The chamber buzzed with nervous conversation in a dozen alien languages. Finally, Counselor Vex spoke up. Even assuming your psychological immunity to the creature's fear field, Captain Shun, the Kretak is still a formidable physical opponent. It possesses supernatural speed, strength, and intelligence. All true, Sarah acknowledged. But it's been alone for 3,000 years, defending a static position. It's had no new challenges, no opportunities to adapt or evolve its tactics. Meanwhile, human military doctrine has been developing continuously. We've fought wars against enemies with every conceivable advantage: superior numbers, technology, speed, strength, intelligence. We've learned to win anyway. Admiral Zefix leaned back in his command chair, for arms crossed in contemplation. Captain Shun, what you're proposing is unprecedented. No council member species has ever volunteered to face a Kretak in single combat. That's because no council species has the right psychological profile, Sarah pointed out. You're all too sensible to produce soldiers like me. This could be seen as a suicidal gesture by a primitive species seeking to prove itself, Counselor Marathak warned. Sarah's expression hardened slightly. Counselor, with respect, humans didn't earn our place on this council by being primitive or suicidal. We earned it by being effective. Give us the mission parameters, and we'll get the job done. The debate continued for hours, with representatives arguing about protocol, precedent, and the wisdom of allowing a human to attempt such a dangerous mission. Sarah waited patiently, occasionally answering technical questions about human military capabilities and psychological assessments. Finally, Admiral Zefix called for order. The council will vote. all in favor of authorizing Captain Chin's mission to Keth Prime. The vote was closer than Sarah expected. Several species abstained, clearly uncomfortable with the precedent being set. But ultimately, the practical benefits outweighed the political concerns. The motion passed. Captain Chun, Admiral Zephyx, said formally, "The Galactic Council hereby authorizes your mission to eliminate the Kret of Keth Prime. What support do you require?" Sarah considered this. "I'll need detailed scans of the facility, historical data on Kret behavior and capabilities, and a fast ship with superior defensive systems. I'll also need permission to use human military equipment that hasn't been cleared for General Council use." "Granted," Admiral Zephyx agreed. "When will you depart?" "Give me 72 hours to prepare," Sarah said. "I'll need to review the target data and select appropriate equipment." As the council session ended, aliens began filing out of the chamber, many casting nervous glances at the human captain. Sarah remained seated, studying the Kret image on the main display. Admiral Zephyx approached her station. "Captain Chun, I must ask, are you certain about this? The creature has killed warriors from species far older and more experienced than humanity. Your confidence may be misplaced." Sarah looked up at the Admiral's concerned expression. "Admiral, let me tell you something about humans that didn't make it into our official assessments. We have a saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. For 3,000 years, this creature has been the ultimate predator, unchallenged and undefeated. It's grown complacent. And you believe that gives you an advantage?" "I believe that makes it vulnerable," Sarah replied. "Every predator has weaknesses. The Kret greatest strength, its psychological dominance, becomes irrelevant against an opponent who isn't affected. Strip away the fear factor, and what you have is a large, intelligent animal that's been alone for millennia with nothing to do but guard a cache of ancient weapons." Admiral Zephyx studied her for a long moment. "Captain Chun, I pray your assessment is correct, because if you're wrong, we'll have lost not only a promising young officer, but potentially our only chance to eliminate this threat without destroying Keth Prime." Sarah stood and gathered her equipment. "Admiral, there's one more thing you should know about humans like me. We don't just hunt dangerous prey for survival. We hunt them because it's what we're designed to do. And after 3,000 years of waiting, this creature is about to learn why humans earned their place among the stars." As she walked toward the exit, Sarah's mind was already working through tactical possibilities. The Kret was undoubtedly dangerous, but it was also predictable. It had spent 3 millennia in isolation, following the same behavioral patterns, responding to the same stimuli. It had never faced an opponent who would see its fearsome presence and think, finally, a worthy challenge. The creature might be the last of the legendary Void Hunter war beasts, but it was about to encounter something the galaxy had never seen before, a human apex predator on the hunt. And Sarah Chun was very, very good at what she did. Sarah Chun stood in the equipment bay of the human research vessel Prometheus, methodically checking each piece of gear that would accompany her on what many considered a suicide mission. The ship had been retrofitted specifically for this operation, its cargo bay converted into a tactical preparation facility that would have impressed even the most experienced council military advisors. "You know, Captain, when you said you needed equipment that hasn't been cleared for General Council use, I thought you meant maybe some advanced scanning gear," said Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, her first officer, as he watched her examine a device that looked like it belonged in a science fiction nightmare. "I didn't expect you to requisition half of Special Operations Command's black-budget toys." Sarah held up what appeared to be a simple metal bracelet, but the subtle energy readings from its surface suggested otherwise. "This is a neural interface dampener. If the Kret psychic field operates on quantum frequencies similar to our preliminary model suggests, this should provide additional protection against mental intrusion." "Additional protection?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I thought you said your psychological profile made you immune." "Resistant, not immune," Sarah corrected, sliding the device onto her wrist. "My brain chemistry makes me naturally less susceptible to fear-based psychic attacks. but the Krethack's abilities have been documented as affecting even mechanical systems. I'm not taking unnecessary chances. She moved to a sleek black case containing what looked like a rifle designed by someone with a very creative imagination. The weapon was clearly human in origin, but it incorporated technology that pushed the boundaries of current galactic treaties regarding destructive capability. Plasmagravitic rifle, Sarah explained, lifting the weapon and checking its power cells. It fires concentrated plasma bursts surrounded by gravitational field matrix, effective against both organic targets and energy-based defenses. The gravitational component should disrupt the Krethack's crystalline horn structures if they're used for energy projection. Marcus whistled low. Sarah, that thing could put a hole through a battlecruiser's hull plating. That's the idea, she replied matter-of-factly. The Krethack has been recorded surviving direct hits from conventional energy weapons. I need something with enough punch to ensure that when I hit it, it stays down. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's xenobiologist, approached with a tablet displaying the latest analysis of the Keth Prime facility scans. Captain, I've been reviewing the structural data from a site. The facility appears to be a hybrid of Void Hunter technology and something much older, possibly pre-civilization Kethran architecture. Sarah accepted the tablet and studied the three-dimensional schematic. The facility was a maze of interconnected chambers carved directly into the bedrock of a massive mountain. Energy readings suggested that most of the complex was still powered by some form of ancient reactor system. What's this large central chamber? Sarah asked, pointing to a vast circular space at the heart of the complex. That appears to be where the Krethack has established its primary territory, Dr. Vasquez explained. The salvage crews detected the creature's energy signature emanating from that location. Interestingly, the chamber shows signs of significant modification since the original Void Wars. Modifications? Sarah looked up sharply. The creature appears to have been redecorating, Dr. Vasquez said with obvious discomfort. Scans indicate that bones from various species have been arranged in specific patterns throughout the chamber. Some formations suggest ritualistic or territorial behavior, while others appear to be strategic positioning for defensive purposes. Sarah nodded grimly. It's been planning for eventual intruders. 3,000 years of solitude hasn't made it complacent. It's made it paranoid and defensive. Lieutenant Commander Webb studied the schematic over her shoulder. Sarah, this facility has 17 different routes to the central chamber. How do you plan to approach without triggering whatever defenses the creature has established? I don't, Sarah replied, surprising both officers. Stealth won't work against a predator that's had 3 millennia to perfect its territorial awareness. Instead, I'm going to do something the Krethack won't expect. Which is? Dr. Vasquez asked. Sarah smiled, and there was something in her expression that reminded both officers why certain humans were classified as apex predators. I'm going to announce myself and walk straight through the front door. The bridge of the Prometheus buzzed with controlled activity as the ship approached the dead system of Keth Prime. The planet loomed before them, a brown and gray world that bore the scars of ancient warfare. Massive craters dotted its surface, and the remnants of orbital stations drifted through space like metallic ghosts. Admiral Zefix's voice crackled through the communications system from his flagship, which maintained a safe distance of several light minutes. Captain Shun, we're reading significant energy spikes from the planetary surface. The creature appears to have detected our presence. Sarah stood at the center of the bridge, now dressed in matte black combat armor that incorporated both human military technology and specially modified alien defensive systems. The armor was sleek, but functional, designed for maximum mobility while providing protection against energy weapons and physical attacks. Acknowledged, Admiral, Sarah replied. That's actually good news. If the Krethack is reacting to our presence, it means it's still following predictable territorial behavior patterns. Captain, came the voice of Counselor Vex through a secondary channel. Our long-range sensors are detecting movement within the facility. The creature appears to be pacing. Sarah checked her equipment one final time. The plasma gravitic rifle was secured across her back, along with several smaller weapons designed for close-quarters combat. Various sensing devices, recording equipment, and emergency beacons were distributed across her armor's attachment points. Pacing suggests agitation and anticipation, she observed. It knows something is coming, but it doesn't know what. That uncertainty is the first advantage I have. Lieutenant Commander Webb approached with a final systems check report. All equipment shows green, Captain. The shuttle is prepped and ready for deployment. Are you sure you don't want backup? Marcus, we've been through this, Sarah said patiently. Additional personnel would just provide more targets for the creature to focus on, and the psychological effect only works if the Kret hack perceives a single challenger rather than a hunting party. Dr. Vasquez handed her a small data recorder. Captain, if things go badly, this device will continue transmitting data back to the ship. Whatever we learn from this encounter needs to reach the Council. Sarah accepted the recorder and secured it to her armor. Doctor, I appreciate the contingency planning, but I intend to deliver my after-action report in person. As she prepared to board the shuttle, Admiral Zefix's voice returned to the communications channel. Captain Chun, before you depart, I must ask one more time, are you certain about this approach? Everything we know about Kret hack behavior suggests that direct confrontation is exactly what these creatures are designed to handle. Sarah paused at the shuttle entrance. Admiral, you're absolutely correct. The Kret hack was designed to handle direct confrontation from prey species. But it was never designed to handle direct confrontation from another apex predator. There's a difference. What difference? Admiral Zefix asked. Prey runs or hides when confronted by a predator, Sarah explained. Another predator doesn't run. It evaluates the threat, selects appropriate tactics, and then attacks with the intention of eliminating competition. The Kret hack has spent 3,000 years dealing with prey species that were psychologically programmed to fear it. It's about to encounter something that sees it as a rival to be eliminated. The shuttle bay doors opened, revealing the scarred surface of Keth Prime below. Sarah took her position at the pilot's controls, though the shuttle was equipped with autonomous landing systems. Beginning descent, she reported. Estimated arrival at facility entrance in 12 minutes. As the shuttle descended through the thin atmosphere, Sarah reviewed her tactical analysis one more time. The Kret hack was undoubtedly dangerous. That wasn't in question. But it was also operating from a position that hadn't been challenged in 3 millennia. It had grown accustomed to easy victories against opponents who were defeated before the physical confrontation even began. The facility entrance came into view through the shuttle's viewport, a massive archway carved into the mountainside, surrounded by the twisted wreckage of the salvaged ships that had attempted to approach. Energy readings from the entrance showed clear signs of the creature's presence deeper within the complex. Sarah landed the shuttle approximately 100 meters from the entrance, well within what previous expeditions had reported as the creature's terror field range. She powered down the engines and performed a final equipment check. This is Captain Chun to all stations, she announced over the communication system. I'm now entering the Kret hack's territorial range. From this point forward, assume that all transmissions may be monitored by the target. Understood, Captain, Admiral Zefix replied. All ships are standing by for your signal. Sarah opened the shuttle door and stepped onto the rocky surface of Keth Prime. The air was thin but breathable, carrying the metallic scent of ancient warfare and something else, something organic and predatory that seemed to trigger instinctive warnings in the deeper parts of her brain. Most beings would have experienced paralyzing terror at that moment. Sarah Chun felt her pulse quicken with anticipation. She began walking toward the facility entrance, her boots crunching on the crystalline sand that covered the ground. With each step, the sensation of being watched grew stronger. Something massive and intelligent was evaluating her approach, trying to understand why this small figure showed no signs of the fear response that had characterized every other intrusion. 50 meters from the entrance, Sarah stopped and activated her external communications system, projecting her voice toward the facility with enough volume to carry throughout the complex. "I am Captain Sarah Chun of the Human Star Fleet," she announced clearly. "I know you can hear me, and I know you're wondering why I'm not afraid. The answer is simple. I'm not prey. I'm here to claim this territory, and I'm giving you the courtesy of knowing that I'm coming." The response was immediate and overwhelming. A sound erupted from the facility that was part roar, part electronic scream, and part something that bypassed the ears entirely and resonated in the bones. It was a challenge cry that had terrified entire armies, a declaration of dominance that had broken the will of countless warriors. Sarah listened to the sound with professional interest, analyzing its acoustic properties and psychological effects. When it faded, she smiled and resumed walking toward the entrance. "Impressive," she called out. "But I've heard scarier sound from human drill sergeants. Now let's see what you can do when your psychological warfare doesn't work." As she reached the threshold of the facility, energy readings spiked dramatically. The creature was moving, repositioning itself deeper within the complex. It was preparing for something it had never encountered before, a challenger who walked into its domain with confidence rather than fear. Sarah crossed the threshold and entered the Krethack's domain, her hand resting casually on the grip of her sidearm. Behind her, the shuttle's automated systems began transmitting continuous status reports to the fleet. Ahead of her, something ancient and terrible waited in the depths of a facility designed for war. The hunt was about to begin, and for the first time in 3,000 years, the Krethack of Keth Prime was not the only predator in the game. The interior of the Void Hunter facility was a testament to alien engineering and 3,000 years of single-minded territorial modification. Sarah moved through corridors carved from living rock, their surfaces covered with a biometallic substance that pulsed faintly with its own light. The walls showed clear signs of the Krethack's presence, deep claw marks scoring the metal, and in some places, arranged collections of bones from various species that had attempted this approach over the millennia. What struck Sarah most was the deliberate nature of the modifications. This wasn't random destruction or simple nesting behavior. The creature had spent centuries, possibly millennia, turning the facility into a sophisticated death trap. Narrow passages were positioned to force intruders into vulnerable positions, while wider chambers contained carefully constructed obstacles that would funnel attackers into killing zones. "Clever girl," Sarah murmured, unconsciously echoing an ancient human film reference as she analyzed a particularly cunning arrangement of debris that would force anyone approaching from the main corridor to expose themselves to attack from 3 different directions. Her helmet's heads-up display painted the environment in tactical overlays, highlighting potential threats and mapping the facility's layout as she progressed. Energy readings showed the creature's position approximately 800 meters ahead, in what the external scans had identified as the central chamber. But what concerned Sarah more than the distance was the pattern of the energy readings. They weren't static. The creature was moving in precise, calculated patterns throughout the chamber. It wasn't pacing randomly or showing signs of agitation. It was positioning itself strategically, preparing for her arrival with the kind of tactical thinking that suggested intelligence far beyond animal cunning. Sarah paused at a junction where 3 corridors intersected, consulting her tactical display. The most direct route to the central chamber lay straight ahead, but her analysis suggested it was also the most heavily trapped. Alternative routes existed, but they would take significantly longer and might indicate to the creature that she was attempting stealth rather than direct confrontation. The decision was easy. Sarah continued straight ahead. As she moved deeper into the facility, the psychological pressure began to build. It started as a subtle sensation, like being watched by something immense and hostile. But as she progressed, it intensified into something that would have sent most sentient beings fleeing in terror. The very air seemed to thicken with predatory intent, and shadows appeared to move independently of their sources. Sarah's neural interface dampener registered the increasing psychic activity, its readings climbing steadily as she approached the central chamber. Most concerning was that the effect wasn't random. It was being deliberately focused and amplified, suggesting that the Kret hack was consciously using its abilities to maximum effect rather than relying on passive emanations. 300 meters from the central chamber, Sarah encountered the first active defense mechanism. As she stepped into a circular room, motion sensors triggered hidden panels in the walls, revealing weapon systems that looked like a hybrid of Void Hunter technology and organic components. Energy weapons of unknown design swiveled toward her position and began charging. Sarah's enhanced reflexes kicked in before her conscious mind had fully processed the threat. She dove sideways, rolling behind a pillar as energy beams seared the air where she had been standing. The weapons tracked her movement with mechanical precision, but their positioning suggested they were designed to eliminate targets paralyzed by fear rather than mobile opponents. A plasma grenade from her equipment belt took care of the first weapon emplacement, while a precisely aimed shot from her sidearm disabled the second. The third weapon continued tracking her until she closed to point-blank range and physically ripped its power coupling from the wall. Automated defenses, Sarah reported to her helmet recorder. Sophisticated but predictable, designed for stationary targets rather than active resistance. The psychological pressure intensified as she resumed her advance. By now, most sentient beings would have been reduced to gibbering terror, their minds overwhelmed by the sheer predatory presence emanating from the central chamber. Sarah felt the effects, a constant pressure at the edges of her consciousness, whispers of existential dread trying to take root in her thoughts, but her training and natural psychological makeup allowed her to push through. 200 meters from the central chamber, she encountered evidence that other beings had made it this far. The corridor was littered with equipment and personal effects from what appeared to be a well-equipped military expedition. Scorch marks on the walls suggested a significant firefight had taken place. Sarah knelt to examine a piece of advanced body armor that bore the insignia of the Altarian Defense Corps. The armor had been torn apart by something with immense strength and surgical precision. Deep gouges in the metal showed that whatever had done this possessed claws capable of shearing through military-grade protective materials. Previous expedition eliminated at this position, Sarah noted for her recorder. Evidence suggests the attackers were not paralyzed by psychic effects at this range. The Kret hack had to physically engage to eliminate them. Interesting. She stood and continued forward, now moving with enhanced caution. The creature had demonstrated that it was willing and able to leave its prepared position to eliminate threats that proved resistant to its psychological warfare. That suggested confidence in its physical capabilities and tactical flexibility that made it even more dangerous. 100 meters from the central chamber, Sarah encountered the Kret hack's masterpiece of psychological warfare. The corridor opened into a vast antechamber whose walls were decorated with the preserved remains of every species that had ever attempted to claim this facility. Hundreds of skeletons were arranged in precise patterns, creating a macabre gallery that told the story of 3,000 years of unsuccessful challenges. Each display was carefully constructed to maximize psychological impact. Here, the remains of a proud warrior species were arranged to show their final moments of terror. There, the bones of a technologically advanced race were positioned to demonstrate how their superior equipment had failed them. The message was clear. Regardless of species, technology, or preparation, all challengers ended the same way. Sarah walked through the gallery with professional detachment, analyzing each display for tactical information. The arrangement of the remains told her much about the creature's combat techniques, preferred methods of elimination, and psychological understanding of different species. Extensive trophy collection, she reported. Creature demonstrates sophisticated understanding of xenopsychology and uses fear as primary weapon. However, arrangement suggests obsessive-compulsive tendencies and possible psychological dependence on intimidation tactics. At the far end of the antechamber, massive doors carved from a single piece of crystalline material stood between Sarah and the central chamber. Energy readings indicated that the creature was directly beyond these doors, moving in slow, deliberate patterns that suggested it was aware of her presence and preparing for confrontation. Sarah approached the doors and placed her armored hand against their surface. The crystal was warm to the touch and pulsed with internal light that synchronized with her heartbeat. The psychological pressure was now overwhelming, a crushing weight of predatory intent that would have driven most beings insane. Instead, Sarah felt her own predatory instincts responding to the challenge. Her heart rate increased, but not with fear, with anticipation. Her muscles tensed with readiness rather than terror. For the first time in her adult life, she was facing something that might actually be dangerous enough to test her capabilities. "This is Captain Chun," she announced, knowing that the creature could hear her through the doors. "I've seen your collection, and I'm impressed. You've eliminated some truly formidable opponents over the centuries. But you've never faced anything like me." The movement patterns beyond the doors stopped. For a moment, perfect silence filled the antechamber. Then, the doors began to open. The massive crystalline panels slid apart with a sound like breaking glass, mixed with distant thunder. Beyond them lay the central chamber, a vast circular space that rose several stories above and descended several levels below. The chamber was illuminated by bioluminescent panels that cast strange, shifting shadows across walls covered in more trophies and territorial markings. At the center of the chamber, on a raised platform that might once have been a command dais, stood the Krethak. Sarah's first thought was that the historical records had not adequately conveyed the creature's physical presence. Standing nearly 8 feet tall at the shoulder, the beast was a masterpiece of predatory evolution. Its metallic scales caught and reflected the chamber's light, creating a constantly shifting pattern of highlights and shadows. 6 powerful legs ended in claws that looked capable of rending steel, while its elongated head was crowned with crystalline horns that glowed with internal energy. But it was the creature's eyes that captured Sarah's attention. Large, multifaceted orbs that held an intelligence that was both alien and terrifyingly familiar. This was not a simple beast driven by instinct. This was a sapient predator that had spent 3 millennia perfecting the art of killing. The Krethak studied Sarah with the same analytical intensity that she was applying to it. For several heartbeats, neither moved. The psychological pressure in the chamber was crushing, a weight of pure predatory dominance that should have sent any sane being fleeing in terror. Sarah smiled and stepped into the chamber. The creature's head tilted slightly, a gesture that somehow conveyed both curiosity and growing hostility. It had never encountered a being that could enter its domain and show no signs of the fear response that was fundamental to its hunting strategy. "You're beautiful," Sarah said conversationally, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. 3,000 years of evolution have made you perfect at what you do. Unfortunately for you, I'm perfect at what I do too. The Krethak's response was immediate and devastating. It opened its mouth and released a sonic attack that would have liquefied the organs of most species. The sound was not just heard, but felt a physical force that hammered at Sarah's body and mind with crushing intensity. Sarah's armor absorbed much of the sonic energy, but enough got through to demonstrate the creature's lethal capability. She felt blood trickling from her nose and ears, and her vision briefly blurred from the neurological impact. When the attack ended, Sarah wiped the blood from her face and looked up at the creature with genuine admiration. "That's new," she said. "The historical records didn't mention sonic weaponry. You've been adapting and improving your capabilities. Excellent. This is going to be fun." For the first time in 3,000 years, the Krethak of Keth Prime encountered something that saw its most devastating attacks and responded with enthusiasm rather than terror. The creature's multifaceted eyes focused on Sarah with an intensity that suggested it was beginning to understand that this confrontation would be unlike any other in its long existence. Sarah unslung her plasmagravitic rifle and checked its charge levels. "I'm going to give you the same courtesy you showed my predecessors," she announced. "A chance to see what's coming before it hits you." The hunt was about to begin in earnest, and both predators knew that only one would leave the chamber alive. The first exchange happened faster than most beings could perceive. The Kretak launched itself from the platform with explosive force, 6 legs propelling its massive form through the air with speed that defied its size. Crystalline horns blazed with energy as it descended towards Sarah like a falling star armed with lethal intent. Sarah's enhanced reflexes and years of combat training saved her life in that first crucial second. Instead of dodging backward as most opponents would, she rolled forward and to the side, passing beneath the creature as it landed where she had been standing. The impact of the Kretak's landing shattered the stone floor and sent fragments flying like shrapnel. Her plasmagravitic rifle spoke once, sending a concentrated burst of energy toward the creature's center mass. The shot hit true, but instead of the devastating impact Sarah expected, the energy dispersed across the Kretak's metallic scales in a shower of sparks. The gravitational component of the weapon seemed to have some effect, causing the creature to stumble slightly, but it was far from the decisive blow she had hoped for. The Kretak spun toward her with fluid grace, its movement more like liquid mercury than a living creature. One massive claw swept through the space Sarah had occupied, missing her by inches as she continued her tactical withdrawal. The creature's speed was extraordinary, faster than historical records had suggested, and certainly faster than anything had a right to be at that size. "Adaptive armor," Sarah noted grimly as she put distance between herself and her opponent. "Energy weapons are less effective than projected." The creature's response was to demonstrate another capability that hadn't appeared in the historical files. The crystalline horns on its head began to glow more intensely, and suddenly, the air around Sarah erupted in bursts of directed energy. The attacks weren't random. Each blast was precisely aimed to cut off her escape routes and force her into a position where the creature could close for physical combat. Sarah found herself dancing through a deadly light show, her enhanced agility pushed to its limits as she avoided energy blasts that carved deep gouges in the chamber walls. The Kretak was hurting her, using its ranged capabilities to control her movement while positioning itself for another devastating charge. But Sarachin hadn't survived a career of fighting impossible odds by playing her opponent's game. Instead of continuing to retreat, she suddenly changed direction and sprinted directly toward one of the chamber's support pillars. Energy blasts seared the air around her as the Kretak adjusted its targeting, but she reached cover just as the creature launched itself forward again. This time, Sarah was ready. As the Kretak's momentum carried it past her hiding spot, she emerged and fired her rifle at point-blank range, not at the creature's armored body, but at its legs. The gravitational component of the weapon disrupted the precise coordination needed for the creature's lightning-fast movement, causing it to stumble and crash into the chamber wall. The impact was enormous. Stone and metal fragments rained down as the Kretak's form carved a crater in the ancient wall. But the creature recovered with disturbing speed, shaking off debris that would have crushed a normal being and turning to face Sarah with what could only be described as respect. "You're learning," Sarah said, breathing hard but grinning. "Good. I was worried this might be too easy." The Kretak's response was a sound that combined elements of a roar, electronic feedback, and something that bypassed hearing entirely to resonate in Sarah's bones. But this time there was something different about the vocalization. The overwhelming terror that had characterized its earlier sonic attacks was still present, but now it was mixed with something else: anticipation. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Kretak was facing an opponent that could match its capabilities. The creature was enjoying the challenge. Sarah realized this shift in her opponent's psychology represented both an opportunity and a significant new danger. A Kret hack driven by instinct and territorial defense was predictable. A Kret hack that was actively enjoying combat was something entirely different. The creature's next attack demonstrated this new dynamic. Instead of the straightforward charges it had been using, the Kret hack began a complex pattern of movement that utilized the chamber's vertical space. It scaled the walls with impossible speed, using its claws to find purchase on surfaces that looked perfectly smooth, then launched itself from unexpected angles. Sarah found herself fighting a three-dimensional battle against an opponent that seemed to defy gravity. Energy blasts rained down from above, while the creature bounced between walls, floor, and ceiling with predatory grace. Her rifle was effective when she could target the creature's legs, but landing shots on a target moving with such errata patterns was proving extremely difficult. A near miss from the Kret hack's claws reminded Sarah that she was one mistake away from joining the trophy collection that decorated the chamber walls. The creature's talons passed close enough to her helmet to score the armored surface, leaving deep gouges that spoke to their incredible sharpness. Time for a change of tactics. Sarah holstered her rifle and drew two smaller weapons, plasma pistols modified with targeting systems that could track extremely fast-moving objects. The trade-off was reduced power per shot, but increased accuracy and rate of fire. If she couldn't punch through the creature's armor with single powerful shots, she would try to overwhelm it with volume of fire. The new weapons proved more effective at tracking the Kret hack's movement, and Sarah began landing consistent hits. Individual shots still weren't penetrating the creature's metallic scales, but the cumulative effect was beginning to show. Scorch marks appeared across the creature's hide, and its movements showed subtle signs of the energy impacts affecting its coordination. More importantly, the Kret hack was beginning to show signs of frustration. Its attacks became more aggressive, but less precise, suggesting that the creature was accustomed to quick victories rather than extended battles of attrition. Sarah pressed her advantage, using her superior maneuverability to stay mobile while maintaining constant fire. The chamber became a deadly dance as both combatants sought to gain the upper hand through positioning and timing. The turning point came when the Kret hack, in its eagerness to close for a killing blow, made a tactical error. It launched itself from the chamber ceiling in a devastating attack that would have eliminated any normal opponent, but Sarah had been anticipating exactly this kind of assault. Instead of dodging, she dropped to one knee and fired both pistols directly upward, targeting the creature's less armored underside. The concentrated plasma bursts found their mark, and for the first time in the battle, the Kret hack showed clear signs of significant damage. Its landing was uncontrolled, and when it rolled to its feet, Sarah could see greenish fluid seeping from wounds along its torso. The creature's reaction was immediate and terrifying. Instead of the calculated predator she had been fighting, Sarah suddenly found herself facing something driven by pain and rage. The Kret hack sonic attack this time was purely about causing damage rather than psychological effect, and the sheer volume of sound in the enclosed chamber was devastating. Sarah's helmet absorbed much of the impact, but enough got through to cause serious disorientation. Her vision blurred, and she felt blood flowing freely from her nose and ears. Worse, the sonic attack had damaged her balance, making precise movement difficult. The Kret hack pressed its advantage, charging forward while Sarah was still recovering from the sonic assault. This time, there was no room for evasion. The creature's massive form filled her vision as claws descended toward her position. Sarah's training took over where conscious thought failed. Her body moved without deliberate control, muscle memory executing defensive patterns drilled into her through thousands of hours of combat preparation. She rolled backward, using the creature's momentum against it, and came up with a weapon she hadn't yet used in this fight. The monomolecular blade was a piece of human military technology that pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible. A field-generated edge only a few molecules thick could cut through virtually any material, limited only by the power supply and the user's ability to apply it effectively. As the Krethack's claws passed over her, Sarah's blade swept upward in a precise arc, targeting the creature's front leg just above the joint. The monomolecular edge passed through the armored appendage with almost no resistance, separating the limb cleanly from the creature's body. The Krethack's roar of pain and rage was deafening, but the psychological effect on Sarah was exactly the opposite of what the creature intended. After being outmatched in speed and strength, she had finally landed a truly effective blow. The sight of her opponent's greenish blood flowing freely filled her with savage satisfaction. But the creature was far from finished. Wounded and enraged, the Krethack began using capabilities that it had held in reserve, treating Sarah as a genuine threat for the first time in their encounter. The crystalline horns on its head began to resonate, creating a harmonic frequency that interfered with Sarah's electronics. Her helmet display flickered and died, leaving her relying on natural senses and the strange lighting of the chamber. More dangerous was the change in the creature's energy projections. Instead of discrete blasts, the Krethack began generating a continuous field of destructive force around its body. The air itself became dangerous, crackling with energy that would incinerate anything that came too close. Sarah found herself in the position of having wounded an extremely dangerous opponent without eliminating it. The creature was now desperate, which made it both more dangerous and more unpredictable. But it was also bleeding heavily from its severed limb, which meant time was working in her favor if she could survive the creature's final assault. The Krethack gathered itself for what was clearly intended to be a decisive attack. Energy built around its form until the very air seemed to burn, and its remaining 5 legs coiled with tension as it prepared to launch itself in one final, overwhelming assault. Sarah checked her weapons and equipment, making rapid calculations about her remaining options. The monomolecular blade had proven effective, but getting close enough to use it again would require surviving an attack that might well be beyond her capabilities to evade. But as she watched the creature prepare for its final assault, Sarah smiled. Because in all her years of fighting impossible odds, she had learned one crucial truth. The moment when an enemy commits everything to a single attack is also the moment when they become most vulnerable. The question was whether she could survive long enough to exploit that vulnerability. The Krethack's final assault was a thing of terrible beauty. Energy cascaded around its massive form as it launched itself through the air, no longer bound by the tactical caution that had characterized the early phases of their battle. This was pure predatory fury unleashed, 3,000 years of unchallenged dominance focused into a single, devastating attack. Sarah had perhaps 2 seconds to react before the creature's supercharged form reached her position. Most beings would have used that time to try to escape, but escape was impossible in the confined chamber against an opponent moving at such incredible speed. Instead, Sarah did something that would have seemed like suicide to any observer. She ran directly toward the attacking Krethack. The maneuver caught the creature completely off guard. Its assault had been calculated based on the assumption that its target would either freeze in terror or attempt evasion. It had not anticipated a direct countercharge from such a small opponent. At the last possible moment, Sarah dropped into a slide that carried her beneath the creature's energy-wreathed form. The heat from the Krethack's power field singed her armor and raised the temperature inside her suit to dangerous levels. But she passed under the creature just as its claws swept through the space where she had been standing. As she slid beneath her opponent, Sarah's monomolecular blade swept upward in a precise arc, targeting another of the creature's legs. The field-generated edge passed through armor and flesh with surgical precision, severing the limb and sending the Krethack crashing to the ground in an uncontrolled tumble. The impact was tremendous. The creature's supercharged form struck the chamber wall with enough force to crack the ancient stonework and bring down sections of the ceiling. But even wounded and disoriented, the Kret hack was far from helpless. It rolled to its feet with surprising agility for something missing 2 of its 6 legs, and its crystalline horns blazed with lethal energy. What followed was the most desperate phase of their battle. The wounded Kret hack fought with the fury of a cornered apex predator, using every capability at its disposal to eliminate the threat that had dared to challenge its dominance. Energy blasts filled the air, while sonic attacks tested the limits of Sarah's protective equipment. But the loss of 2 legs had fundamentally changed the creature's capabilities. Its legendary speed was severely compromised, and its balance was uncertain. Sarah pressed her advantage ruthlessly, using hit-and-run tactics to exploit the creature's reduced mobility while avoiding its devastating retaliatory strikes. The battle became a deadly game of endurance. The Kret hack's wounds were bleeding heavily, weakening it with each passing moment. But its remaining capabilities were still more than sufficient to kill Sarah if she made a single mistake. Meanwhile, Sarah's armor was showing serious damage from the creature's attacks, and her own stamina was beginning to flag. The decisive moment came when the Kret hack, in desperation, attempted to use its sonic capabilities to bring down sections of the chamber ceiling. The creature's plan was simple but effective. If it couldn't hit its agile opponent directly, it would eliminate her mobility by trapping her under tons of falling stone. Sarah saw the attack coming and realized she had only one chance to end the battle before the chamber became her tomb. As cracks spread across the ceiling above, she sprinted directly toward the wounded Kret hack, ignoring the creature's defensive energy fields and closing to point-blank range. The Kret hack's claws swept toward her in a killing blow that would have cut her in half, but Sarah's timing was perfect. She ducked under the attack and drove her monomolecular blade deep into the creature's chest, targeting the point where she calculated its heart or equivalent organ might be located. For a moment, both combatants were motionless. The Kret hack's eyes met Sarah's, and she saw something that surprised her. Not hatred or fury, but what might have been respect. The creature had finally encountered a worthy opponent, and, in some alien way, it appreciated the experience even as it died. The light faded from the Kret hack's crystalline horns, and the massive form collapsed to the chamber floor. The sound of its final breath echoed through the chamber like the closing of an ancient door. Sarah stood over her fallen opponent, breathing hard and checking herself for injuries. Her armor was severely damaged, and she had numerous cuts and burns from the creature's attacks, but she was alive and victorious. "This is Captain Chun," she announced, activating her emergency transmitter. "The threat has been eliminated. The Kret hack is dead." The response from Admiral Zefix was immediate. "Captain Chun, are you injured? What's your status?" "Injured but mobile," Sarah replied, looking around the chamber that had been the site of their epic battle. "The facility is secure. I'm beginning my search of the Void Hunter weapons cache." As she explored the chamber more thoroughly, Sarah discovered that the Kret hack's modifications to the facility had been more extensive than anyone had realized. Hidden passages led to additional chambers containing not just weapons, but what appeared to be a complete archive of Void Hunter military technology and tactical doctrine. "Admiral," Sarah reported, "this isn't just a weapons cache. It's an entire strategic database." The Kret hack was guarding the collective military knowledge of the Void Hunters. "Understood, Captain. Can you secure the facility for a full archaeological team?" Sarah looked at the complex array of alien technology surrounding her, then at the body of the creature that had protected it for 3 millennia. "Affirmative. But, Admiral, I need you to understand something about what happened here." "What's that, Captain?" The Kret hack wasn't just a mindless war beast. It had intelligence, tactical awareness, and something that might have been honor. It modified this facility not just as a trap, but as a test. I think it was waiting for someone worthy of its full capabilities. There was a long pause before Admiral Zephyx responded. Are you suggesting the creature wanted to be challenged? Sarah considered this carefully. I'm suggesting that after 3,000 years of easy victories against opponents paralyzed by fear, the Krethak had become something more than its original programming. It had evolved into a guardian that was testing challengers to determine if any were worthy of the knowledge it protected. And your assessment is that it accepted you as worthy? Sarah looked at the massive form of her fallen opponent, noting how the creature had positioned itself in death. Even in its final moments, the Krethak had maintained a dignified posture, facing its opponent rather than trying to escape. I think it died satisfied that it had finally found a worthy successor, Sarah said quietly. Over the following hours, as Sarah secured the facility and awaited the arrival of the Council's archaeological teams, she made numerous discoveries that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of both the Void Wars and the creatures that had fought in them. The Krethak had been far more than a biological weapon. It had been a custodian of knowledge, a guardian that had spent 3 millennia perfecting itself while waiting for someone capable of passing its test. But perhaps the most significant discovery was found in a hidden chamber deep within the facility, a data crystal that contained what appeared to be the creature's own personal log. The entries, recorded in a complex form of Void Hunter script, told the story of a being that had gradually developed self-awareness and purpose beyond its original military function. The final entry, dated just days before Sarah's arrival, was particularly revealing. The long vigil nears its end. Sensors detect approaching vessels. Another challenge comes. This one feels different. The usual fear scent is absent from the preliminary scans. Perhaps, finally, a test worthy of the legacy I guard. If this is to be my final battle, let it be against an opponent who understands the honor of single combat. Let my death serve to prove that the knowledge I protect has found a worthy guardian. When Admiral Zephyx arrived with the full archaeological team, he found Sarah sitting quietly in the main chamber, studying the creature's final log entry. Captain Shun, he said formally, the Galactic Council has asked me to convey their gratitude for your successful completion of this mission. Your actions have eliminated a significant threat and recovered invaluable historical information. Sarah nodded absently, then looked up at the Admiral. Sir, I need to make a recommendation about how this site is handled. What kind of recommendation? Sarah gestured toward the Krethak's body, which lay in the center of the chamber like a fallen warrior awaiting burial. This creature wasn't a monster. It was a guardian, a protector of knowledge who took its duty seriously for 3,000 years. It deserves to be remembered as such. Admiral Zephyx studied the massive form with new eyes. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we establish a memorial here, Sarah said. Not just for the Council species who died in the Void Wars, but for all the beings who served with honor, including this one. The Krethak of Keth Prime was the last of its kind, and it died protecting knowledge that will benefit the entire galaxy. That deserves recognition. The Admiral considered this for a long moment. Captain, your psychological profile suggested you were an apex predator, someone driven by the need to eliminate competition. Yet you're requesting honors for a defeated opponent. Sarah smiled slightly. Admiral, true apex predators understand something that lesser beings often miss. Honor between worthy opponents transcends species, politics, and even death. This creature tested me, pushed me beyond my limits, and in doing so, gave me something precious, the knowledge that I had earned my victory. And you believe the creature gained something as well? Sarah looked one more time at the peaceful expression on the Krethak's alien features. I believe it died knowing that its long vigil was over, and that the knowledge it had protected for 3,000 years would be used wisely. The memorial to the Krethak of Keth Prime was established 6 months later, featuring not only the creature's preserved form, but also excerpts from its personal log translated into dozens of galactic languages. The inscription, suggested by Captain Sarah Chun, read simply, "Here lies the last guardian of Keth Prime, who served with honor for 3,000 years, and died as all true warriors should, facing a worthy opponent in honorable combat. The discovery of the Void Hunter database revolutionized galactic military doctrine and led to numerous technological advances that benefited all Council species. But perhaps more importantly, the story of Captain Chin's battle with the Krethack became a legend that transcended species boundaries, a tale of honor, courage, and the respect that exists between true warriors, regardless of the form they take. Sarah Chan returned to active duty with a new understanding of what it meant to be an apex predator. It wasn't about dominating or destroying everything in one's path. It was about recognizing worthy opponents, fighting with honor, and understanding that true victory came not from easy conquest, but from triumphing over challenges that tested one's absolute limits. The galaxy had learned that humans possessed warriors capable of facing any threat without fear. But, more importantly, it had learned that such warriors understood the difference between defeating an enemy and honoring a fallen opponent who had fought with courage and dignity. And in the depths of space, on a dead world that had once been the heart of a vanished civilization, the memorial to an ancient guardian served as a reminder that heroism and honor existed in forms that might surprise those wise enough to recognize them.